welcome to Eagle Eye on Crime, the podcast where law comes to life. I'm your host, the criminal justice professor. Whether you're a college student, a seasoned professional, or just someone intrigued by the complexities of the justice system, you've found your new podcast. Let's dive into this week's case. When I look back on my career, I can think of so many cases that have affected me. One in particular still haunts me to this day. The double murder case with innocent victims Allison Sousa and Jeremy Jarvis occurred over 20 years ago, but I can still remember this day as if it was yesterday. This case intertwines violence, psychological intrigue, and forensic investigations. Let me tell you about it. So it was a hot day in Florida. I was a newly promoted sergeant working the swing shift. This was a shift that started about midday. The goal was that we were to work during the busiest times to provide support to both day shift and night shift patrol units. It was September 24th, 2003, and it was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At 3:07, a call comes into 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a female caller. She responds with, "Oh my God, don't hurt me," and no. The dispatcher then heard what sounded like people throwing things around, followed by total silence. The line remained open for 4 minutes. Another 911 call comes in shortly after the first. It's a female frantically screaming for help. Her name is Amanda Short. She works for a local construction company named Total Construction Management, and it's located in an office complex on County Road 542 in between Winter Haven and Auburndale. She was clearly shaken as she told the dispatcher that a man, injured and bleeding, had stumbled into her office. But that wasn't all. Another man was breaking in, and she could hear him attacking her co-worker, Allison Sousa. Fear gripped her voice as she described the scene, saying one of the men had been stabbed, and she was terrified something unspeakable was happening to her friend Sousa. With the tension rising, she quickly requested an ambulance and managed to give a description of the attacker. He was wearing a white t-shirt, dark shorts, and looked to be over 6 feet tall. "Please, somebody hurry," she cries. The dispatcher, staying calm, kept the caller on the line for what must have felt like an eternity, until deputies from the Polk County Sheriff's Office finally arrived. As we arrived to the scene located at the corner of Jimmy Lee Road and County Road 542, we immediately secured the entire complex. What we found inside will stay with me forever. 2 bloodied, lifeless bodies lay in the rear warehouse of Unit 1. One was Allison Sousa, the business employee, and the other, a white male later identified as Jeremy Jarvis. The scene was gruesome, the kind that etches itself into your memory. Even now, I can smell the blood, a vivid reminder of the horror that unfolded that day. From our only living witness, Amanda Short, we began to piece together the tragic events. She told us that she and her co-worker, Allison Sousa, were just doing their jobs when they heard the terrifying screams from outside their office. Concerned, they opened the door to Unit 1 and were met with a sight straight out of a nightmare. A man, dirty, sweaty, shirtless, and covered in blood. They didn't recognize him, but this man was Jeremy Jarvis. Jarvis, who was clearly in shock and losing blood fast from a wound on the right side of his chest, staggered inside and collapsed into a chair near the door. Amanda told investigators that Allison instinctively tried to help him and began to care for him while frantically calling 911. That was the first 911 call of the day. Amanda says Allison instructed her to go grab towels from the office kitchen, which she did. But as she started to return to the front of Unit 1, she heard the door slam. As she continued forward toward a pass-through window located between the main office and lobby areas, she observed a second male through the window. He was aggressively approaching Allison.
Allison was still attempting to call 911. Amanda told us she caught a glimpse of the second man's profile and a side view of his body. She described him as a white male, early to late 20s, with dark hair, wearing a long white t-shirt and dark shorts. He was about 6'3", 170 pounds, with an olive or tan complexion, no facial hair or hair on his forearms. Amanda could not see whether the second man had anything in his hands. She felt the man was going after her friend Allison, and that he had seen her approach the window. In fear, Amanda fled to an office located further toward the rear of Unit 1. She could hear Allison scream. When Amanda reached the rear office, she closed the door, locked the deadbolt, and dialed 911. This was the second 911 call that came in. Because we had arrived only minutes after the call, we knew the suspect could still be in the area. We suspected he had fled the area on foot, so a perimeter was established. A canine and helicopter assisted in attempting to locate the suspect within the neighborhood behind the business. After further investigation, more of the story unfolded. It was determined the initial attack had started inside the warehouse residence of the male victim, Jeremy Jarvis. He was living in the 5th unit of the complex, and eventually the conflict moved outside. The altercation had moved down to units 1 and 2, which served as the construction company office.
Let's talk about the crime scene. I can attest it was horrific, though I spent as little amount of time within the scene as possible. Once the scene was cleared of the perpetrator, we immediately closed it off. Why do you think we did this? Have you ever heard of Lockhardt's principle? Lockhardt's principle holds that the perpetrator of a crime will bring something into the crime scene and leave with something from it, and that both can be used as forensic evidence. The same can occur by us, law enforcement, or anyone else that enters the scene, such as emergency medical services, witnesses, etc. When we enter the scene, we also bring something in and take something with us. We did not want to contaminate the scene. Polk County Sheriff's Office crime scene technicians and later 3 blood spatter technicians from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement processed the scene. The crime scene was processed for the next several days.
After days of processing the scene, court documents relate the following about the evidence recovered. Take some notes. This is crucial information. Let's start with what was found at Jeremy Jarvis's residence, Unit 5. Inside, the scene was like something out of a horror movie. Blood smeared across the walls near the entryway, a clear sign that a brutal struggle took place. The floor was no better, stained with blood, and the furniture was in chaos, like a tornado of violence had swept through. An overturned sofa, blood droplets trailing from Unit 5 down the sidewalk all the way to the entrance of Unit 1. Take a look at the photos that I took this week to kind of give you an idea of the distance between Unit 5, where the murder started, and Unit 1, where it ended. The crime scene technicians found 2 bloody fingerprints on the door inside Unit 5. But it wasn't just the blood that told a tale. Hidden in the nooks and crannies, under the sofa, beneath Jarvis's mattress, even inside a laundry hamper, were 3 to 5 pounds of marijuana. This wasn't just any stash. It was worth thousands of dollars on the street. And to top it off, Jarvis's mobile phone was discovered, the last piece of evidence tying him to this blood-soaked scene. Now let's move to Unit 1. This was Allison Sousa's workplace, but that day it became something much darker. Blood was everywhere, smeared on both sides of the entry door, pooled near the entrance where Jarvis had collapsed while Sousa frantically called 911. The gumball dispenser in the lobby was overturned, covered in blood, and surrounded by vomit. The bloodstains on the wall showed someone had been shoved against them. There were arcs of blood spatter showing the path of a knife as it slashed through the air, striking its victims again and again. The blood led all the way through the hallway into the kitchen, where it stained everything in its path, to include the refrigerator, the trash bin, and the cabinets. As the blood trail wound its way to the rear warehouse area, there was damage to the door and its frame. There were bloody palm prints smeared on the door. And lastly, $429 was recovered from Jarvis's pocket.
Now that you've heard the chilling details, where would you begin if you were leading this investigation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. Now let's take a sneak peek at what's coming up on Eagle Eye on Crime. I'll be speaking with the lead detective on this case, Jerry Connolly. We will walk through how the pieces of this puzzle came together. We'll uncover how the evidence led them straight to their suspect and hear firsthand from him how the case was cracked wide open. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to express my gratitude for your time and curiosity. Your enthusiasm fuels my passion for bringing you thought-provoking content. This has been Eagle Eye on Crime, and I'm your host, the Criminal Justice Professor. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay curious. Remember, the pursuit of knowledge is a lifelong adventure.